How's it going, everyone? I'm Trevor Andrews. I'm going to show you editing with the tone curve. Now this principle applies in Lightroom, Photoshop, Luminar. I think even some of your phones have it. So come on, let's dive in. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 demonstrations on the tone curve. 1, how you can adjust and grade the color of an image. And 2, how you can use the tone curve to achieve the desired exposure of an image. And 3, we're going to go ahead and break an image and explore why it broke and how we can avoid it. I'm going to start off by creating an S-curve on the RGB channel. I'll do this by creating a dot on the shadow line and dragging it down, and a dot on the highlight line and dragging it up. This will increase the brightness in the highlights and the darks in the shadows, and also increase the range of color in between the 2 points. After I'm done with that, I'm going to move on to each individual color channel, starting with the blue and yellow for color temperature, then move on to the red and cyan. It's not going to look as if it's been color balanced until the very end when you do the final channel. Now switching over to my green and violet channel, you'll see me do the S-curve with the dot in the mid shadows. When you drop down the mid shadow, it balances out the center. Now one trick you can use after all 3 of the tone curve color channels are in use, if something still just looks a little off, you can drop your saturation down to 0. If everything is balanced correctly, your image should be now just black and white. If not, you'll clearly see some color in your image. In this case, I see that there's a little bit of magenta in the shadows. I can correct this by bringing the shadows on the green magenta curve up. After that's corrected, there's still a little bit of cyan left in the shadow. I correct this by bringing the shadow closer to the red in the red cyan channel. Once the image looks pure black and white, you can add the saturation back in, and voila, you have the color. I'm just going to drop the contrast down a little bit and pinch the temperature a little bit more towards yellow, and I think we're done. Let's go ahead and take a look at that before and after. That's nice. Next, we're going to move on to correcting an underexposed image using the tone curve. I like to begin by dragging the furthest left point up on the curve so I can get a better idea of where I place my shadow. I then go from the highlights back down to the shadows to create a logarithmic curve. We do this to create a more compact but steep angle and forcing the light to lift at a higher rate from shadows to highlights. And now that I'm happy with the balancing, let's go ahead and check out the before and after. As you can see, we really make quite a difference. Now let's talk about breaking a photo. This can be easy to do because all it really takes is simply raising a point on the left side of the curve higher than a point on the right, or lowering a point on the right lower than a point on the left. But why does this happen? It's because we're taking a spot on the graph that's supposed to be brighter and we're making it darker than the shadow spot. Here's a little Photoshop demonstration I put together for you. You can see 3 circles of different shades of gray. Each circle represents a different place on the tone line. The lightest is the highlights, the midtones, and the darkest the shadow. I'm going to use the hand tool to place a point for each circle on the line. I'm going to drop the midtones down, and as I do, you can see the gray in the midtones lower so that's the same as the shadows. You can now guess why this could be bad for your picture. If your picture doesn't have a large range in luminosity, you'll begin to lose contrast, and eventually you could create a picture with no contrast at all, just sort of a flat color. You can see I can even go as far as to reverse the images by making the shadows what the highlights were before, and the highlights now what the shadows are at. Alright, I think that's where we're going to stop it today. If you want to learn anything more about the tone curve, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. In the meanwhile, help me out by leaving me a like, subscribe if you like what you saw, ring the bell if you want to see more. Until then, Trevor out.